I feel like people still treat cheating as like the worst fucking thing. Like worse than like fucking murdering somebody. It feels like when people talk about cheating, it is like the literal worst thing. But maybe not everybody feels that way. I don't know. Maybe that's just a commentary.
Yeah,
On
Emily feels
I
that
have
way.
I have a little bit more. I have a little bit more.
Welcome to the Emily and Todd podcast. Before we get started, please like and comment on the video as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm.
Like when I hear like a 22-year-old like guy or girl tell me like, oh, this is exactly what I want in a partner. No offense, but like I roll my eyes. Like you've dated maybe by 22, you've been in maybe one serious relationship. You haven't even lived with your partner. You have no idea what you want, right? Yeah. But then as soon as people like get a little bit older, once you've got like 2 or maybe 3 like serious relationships on your belt, now you have like a much better idea of what it is exactly that you want, and the kind of person you're trying to like build your life with, right? Like I'm sure if you like got a lot of 23-year-old guys and asked them like, what kind of woman do you want? Here you've got like a really good provider. She's like really smart and funny. You get along really well. She can, and then on the other hand, you've got a woman with like huge tits. It's like tits and ass. Boom. Like they would choose it. Like a ton of people would be like, yeah, 100% that's what I want. But then like once you get older and mature and you've had a variety of things, you kind of realize like more what you want in life just because you've been there, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
I don't know.
I have
though.
a question.
I don't know.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
Yeah,
This sounds like
sure.
evidence going against what you've just said, but I'm not 100% sure why. So I'd like to hear your opinion. Because the average age of marriage nowadays for men and women, it's only like 1 year apart between the two, so it's basically the same. Is like I think it's 29 for females and 30 for men. But 50 years ago, it was 20 for both, basically. So they were both getting married, pretty much as soon as they like reached adulthood. And obviously, while the age of marriage has been increasing, which following your argument, Destiny, would make it sound like, oh, people have more time to figure out what they want, date around in their 20s for a bit and then find the ideal partner, make a more wise choice. While that is happening, the rate of divorce has also skyrocketed in that same time. So my point is that 50 years ago, when people were getting married at 20, almost no one was getting divorced. But nowadays, people are getting married at 30 and divorces are at an all-time high. Why is that?
I feel like these are conversations I think that demand like a lot of prying and nuance to figure out what exactly is going on. I think that people are very quick to say like, oh, people are getting divorced, therefore either women are evil or men are lazy or whatever. Like people will jump to like whatever their particular pet project is for how they see society. That's going to be like the single explanatory factor to explain basically why things are the way they are. I think that the reasons why people are getting married and divorced at different rates are a lot. There are a lot of reasons. So one factor for marriage is highly predicated, and I think has been historically, on people's financial success. So for instance, if you're 22, you've got a ton of student debt and you still live with mom and dad, you're not getting married. It's not happening, right? Whereas like prior to maybe like 20 or 30 years ago, you could get a GED, work in a trade, like there wasn't as much stuff to buy. Like you could be relatively financially settled at like 19, 20, 21. Like now you're in a stage in your life where you're kind of like looking for a partner to marry and settle down with. I think you see time and time again. I think I could dig through numbers if you're looking for it, but I'm pretty sure that when it comes time to getting settled down and getting married, I think that the economic status of both people is one of the highest factors into figuring out when that's going to happen. So millennials not being able to buy homes means it puts off their ability to get married. People not being able to just move out in general, even to do apartment, puts it off. People having a lot of debt, like from student loans, and not getting enough in their jobs yet. Like these types of things put off marriage. That's one thing. A second thing is, and this is something that also gets more complicated. I don't always know, or it's hard to say if a higher divorce rate is good or bad, because we don't know if the marriages prior to that were good or bad. So for instance, you might have a society where the divorce rate is really low, but a lot of people, or women especially, might be miserable as fuck in their marriages, but they don't work and they have children and they're basically trapped and they can't get out. So in those societies, like, well, it is what it is. Like, you're fucked. You're kind of like locked there. Whereas today, maybe with reproductive freedom, you don't have to have children as early. And with career freedom, women work, maybe you have the ability to exit a bad relationship earlier. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. It might be that like, no, the higher divorce rate is actually showing like a breakdown in social cohesion, or women are fucking too many chads and now they're not attracted to their husbands anymore, or et cetera. They're like, those could be issues too. But I'm just saying there's a lot of factors that go into why we get married, why we divorce. And just because people are getting divorced, it's not necessarily bad. And just because people are getting married, like in shotgun marriages, somebody gets pregnant at 14 and they get married, that's not necessarily good. So yeah, I'm just like tossing that out there, I guess, for consideration.
But before Todd and Emily respond to that, can I just ask one follow-up question? Like, I agree most of what you just said. I think
Mhm.
most of what is valid points, but I think you miss the elephant in the room. How could you say all of that and not once mention alimony, the welfare state, or divorce, like the money bags that follow?
Because alimony is only paid out in like 10% of relationships. That's an issue that gets paid way too much attention to. So alimony is a non-factor. I wouldn't consider that to be a huge thing that's affecting the trends. Welfare, I don't personally think that people make decisions based on the welfare they'll receive. I don't think there's ever been in the history of the United States a woman who's like, you're a really good man and I would marry you, but I'm going to get paid so much more money if I just live off of welfare, right? Those lives suck. There are no like welfare queens that are, living lives of luxury because they're getting their earned income tax credit boost because they have two dependents and no husband. And then I'm sure there are like some people that make decisions about this, but I don't think that like welfare is explanatory for people's decisions. I've never bought that before. I've never seen good evidence for that.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I'd agree with that as
I
well.
agree with your first points too, on that there's multiple factors that go into marriage and divorce. Totally agree with all of that. And I don't think that alimony or even child support really plays a huge role in making the decision to divorce somebody. I think that there are a few cases out there that men have spoken to where it's like they're getting divorced and their soon to be ex-wife monkey branches immediately to somebody, that earns a good amount of money and can provide for her and the child completely. But then he is left, still paying child support. So she's got, then that and plus some. So she ends up doing pretty well. But I think that's the exception.
Well, I think, but it's one of those things where, because women are on such equal par, I don't think that the laws have caught up yet. As far as, especially child custody.
Especially child support custody. Yeah. It can be 50-50
Yes.
and he still has to pay her child support.
Exactly. And so, but, again, we're in 2022 right now, almost 2023. That, I think those laws should be adjusted.
I agree with that.
So
yeah, I mean, those are going to be those are hard ones. For like good conversations with child support, alimony and stuff are always interesting to me. Those are good to have. But again, I think that's something where a lot of people miss the mark when judges and courts are thinking about child support or custody arrangements. A lot of people come at these from the like what's fair between the father and mother. And from that perspective, I think a lot of people feel like fathers are getting completely fucked by family courts. But when a family court is making a decision, the family court is only ever interested in what is the best outcome for the child. That's the only thing the family court is interested in. Now, people want to change that and look at, well, we're not necessarily as concerned about the child. We want to make sure that the parents have some more fair or equitable arrangement as well. That argument can be made, but I don't think a lot of people realize that they're making that argument. So, for instance, one thing I hear a lot is like the difference in custody awardings after divorces. And people get upset because mothers are oftentimes the ones that are favored in those hearings. But the reason why is because even if both parents are working, if the mother has spent, if the child has spent like 80% of their time with the mother over the father, like the court is going to look at that and the court is going to give the mother a more favorable custody arrangement than the father because the court sees the mother as being like more of a caregiver to the child than the father was, even if it feels unfair to the father. I think that these are things that get factored in a lot that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to sorting out custody arrangements, just from my personal perspective.
That's true, but I think that just to double down a little bit more on my point, I think the main argument, and this is kind of getting into the whole MGTOW sort of idea, that a lot of women who are married today with children, they're basically, left with a choice. They can, and this sounds like quite crude, but they can divorce and essentially have their retirement plan set out for them 20, 30 years early and just raise the child while the man, provided half the assets as soon as the dotted line for the divorce papers is signed, and then potentially alimony on top of that, or she can stay in the marriage. As for what's best for the child, I think what is definitely best is if the couple stays together. I think having this incentive for a woman to divorce so she can get this financial benefit is like really perverse. Like, have you ever heard of that quote? Show me the incentive, and I'll show you the outcome. And
Yeah, but
just to make one further
yeah, go
comment,
for it.
like
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, as in, the reason why I think that it's best for like the best outcome for the child if the man and woman stays together is because when you look at children that are raised by single mothers, they're basically performing worse in every single metric. They're more likely to earn less money as they get older. They're more likely to drop out of high school. They're more likely to end up in jail. They're more likely to do drugs. They're more likely to smoke. They're more likely, yeah, basically every metric. Children raised by single mothers are a mess.
Okay, I don't believe that people en masse are making decisions relating to child support and alimony. I don't think that happens. I feel like this is like and I'm not saying that you do this because I haven't seen your content, but I feel like there's this like cartoonishly evil version of like women that are put forth as these like maniacal like if I divorce my husband now, I'm gonna be fucking set for life and I'm gonna fucking destroy his life. Like it feels like this image is put out. First of all, a lot of people that get divorced don't even get child support, okay? Because the dad just might not have the money to pay it. Secondly, I'm pretty sure the average child support payment in the United States is $400 a month. That's not enough to retire at 35. Okay. And again, to reiterate the earlier thing, alimony goes out in 10% of relationships. Alimony is not a factor for the vast majority of people getting divorced. And I know people like to cite like celebrity cases and shit, or like I think Kanye West has to pay like $200,000 a month, but these are like exceptional. There's a whole bunch of other contract law that's going into this. That's not just like the norm of child support and alimony. Single moms or people that live off of welfare or child support, again, are not living glorious lives. Like, I think if we lived in a world where, like you go outside and it's like, oh my God, another single mom driving a fucking Lamborghini because she's, cashed out so much in her child support online, like this just doesn't happen. Like, we all know and it's irritating too, because like, you've got people like Kevin Samuels and other people in the Red Pill community who will. I posed this question to, I think, Fresh and Fit when I was on their show. I was like, the way that you guys talk, single moms should be the goal for every single guy in the dating market. Why wouldn't you want to get with a woman whose entire life is being paid for by another guy that like you can just date and like cash out on? Apparently she's got his house, she got one of his cars, she's getting like all this money in child support. We all know how single moms live. And then you just said it yourself, right? Like the outcomes for children of single moms are not that good. How is that possible? They're getting all this money in alimony and child support. I don't like that caricature. I don't think it's true. I don't think there's data to support it. And I think if we just look around, I think we kind of know that's not true. Oh, and then on the final point too, that dads and moms that stay together produce better children. I don't know if that's true. I know that healthy families produce better children, but I don't know if a dad and mom that fucking hate each other and stay together, I don't know if the kid's going to be better off in that situation, or if the parents amicably split and then figure out like a custody agreement. Because I guess it'd be interesting to find people that have lived in those like hatred households to find out how they feel. I know a lot of people whose parents split, who they're like, yeah, my mom and dad fucking hated each other. It was better afterwards. And I know some people that have lived in those like really fucked households who are like, I wish my mom and dad just split up, because these people are like constantly at each other's throats. And nothing is worse for a child, in my opinion, than a mom and a dad that are fighting in front of the kid all the time. I feel like that is one of the worst things to put in your child's mind. But sorry. Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here real quick, just because of all my experience in therapy. That actually one of the kind of rules we have, which I agree with you, Stephen, is that it's better to come from a broken home than to live in one. And I think that that's probably what ended up happening in past generations, where there's a lot of families that stayed together and were raising kids. And, again, I don't know, maybe you have a stat or something like that, but it's so difficult to determine how many people came from those types of households and ended up succeeding or feeling, having a good life.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree with you in there, because I think that's a percentage. And that's probably what happened before the divorce rate increased significantly, was there's a lot of people that were staying together because of the kids, and the women had nowhere to go. Right. So they got raised in these households that, and they're also modeling for future relationships. So if your parents aren't touching each other, there's no nurturing, on either side. It's one of those things where that's what you learn.
Yeah, everyone thinks of like volatile relationships right before divorce happens, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just a really cold environment. And, parents are just trying to stick it out until the kids are out of the house, and then they end up divorced. I think that research will be interesting in the next few years, because I think that more people are getting divorced and learning how to co-parent in a healthy way. And I think that those kids are going to be showing up a lot differently than the kids that are being researched from years ago as a result of divorce. Because I think those divorces just probably had reached a point where it was so unhealthy between the parents that both parents were willing to do it. And the woman was willing to leave because it was like that toxic. I think that those kids are going to be quite different. Coming from a personal perspective, because I am divorced and I co-parent, I see it as obviously that as long as you can co-parent in a healthy way, your kids are going to be okay. And it's going to be way better than not divorcing if you couldn't work it out. I do think that that parents should try to work it out. And I think you can speak to that,
Sure.
they should try and then reach the point where they both decide that it's not going to be best. And I think that then leads them into a better ability to co-parent, if they've tried to work through it.
Yeah.
I think that it's really sad for kids that end up with divorced parents that have just ended it very quickly, and it's a very toxic relationship. And one parent, might use the kids against the other parent. And, this can come into child custody. It can also come into child support. I think that those things can be manipulated, but I don't think that's the majority of people.
Yeah. Have you heard of this nesting?
Nesting, no.
So nesting essentially is where.
Oh, wait, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, have you guys heard it?
I've heard the term before. I don't know why I'm not
Yeah.
remembering what it
Okay,
is, though.
so essentially
What
what it is that there's a household and the kids stay there all the time, but the parents rotate in and out.
Yes. I remembered
I
it
haven't
just
heard that
now.
before. Interesting.
So my
Okay.
mom recommended that to me. And I was like, you're crazy. That was a few years ago. I forgot that I had heard that term.
Well, it's supposed to be ideally for the children because then they don't
Yeah.
have to go back and forth from, obviously different households, but sometimes long school routes, that type of thing. And the parents just change. I would think that would be hell for the parents, especially.
Oh, it would be. But talk about putting your kids first.
Yes, exactly. But it's a concept, and I don't know what the stats are, but it's happening. So it's something that I think divorced couples are working on.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear that marriage thing brought up sometimes, and I was like, do you really want like two parents that fucking hate each other to like stay
Yeah.
together for the kids? Like, does anybody
No.
think that's really a good environment for the kids? That seems like a little wild, but
Oh, and to your point about, women deciding to divorce a man simply because she knows that she's going to make out monetarily. Like, I don't think that's true. I think that women want to make sure they'll be okay and they'll have enough for their child, if that man just walks away. But I think that that's just a line that she needs to reach up to. But I don't think that that's like motivating her. She doesn't see herself just pouring in the money. That's not the case. I think it's just that they want enough to survive and for their kids to be okay.
Yes, single moms definitely get a bad rap in the manosphere. I think it's nonsense.
Yeah.
Where it's interesting because single dads don't seem to get as much flack. It almost seems like it's a positive thing.
I see it that way, honestly. Like even on TikTok, and maybe that's just me, because I think that single dads are attractive in many ways because like they show up for their kids and they're doing it themselves. And like, I don't know, I like that idea of a family
I think
man.
there's also something, where like I think that if a guy sees a woman who's like really good with kids, like they don't really care.
Yeah.
But if a woman sees you and you're like playing like with your son, and they think like I think women
my
like
God.
love that shit.
Melts
This
my
is like
heart.
always like 100%. Yeah, I'm a single dad, so like I see like some of the interactions.
See.
But like something that's like really funny. Oh, this is like a cheat code. If you're a guy and you're going over to a girl's house and you want her to like fucking fall in love with you, like if she ever has like dogs or cats, if you get on their good side, it's like the easiest way into this person's heart ever. Because if they see you playing with like their dogs and cats, like oh my god, it's like the cutest thing in the world. Like it's always like such an easy. And then same thing with children too, although that gets a little bit more weird at crossing boundaries. But
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Wheat Waffles?
I heard a couple points that I could respond to. Like Todd mentioned that single mothers get a bad rap in the manosphere, and I think that's for two reasons. The first one's biological, is because no man wants to date a woman who raising a child that isn't theirs. Like guys, have a biological incentive to raise their own offspring. Like it just seems like a waste of resources to a lot of guys to date a woman and raise a child when it's not even their genetic offspring. And the second part is that the reason why single mothers get a bad rap is because a lot of guys say that they're not looking for love. They're not looking, like to date or have a relationship seriously. Rather, they're looking for help. They're looking for financial support. They're looking for somebody to, pick up where the last guy left off. And that doesn't sound very genuine to a lot of guys. Is they
Do you
would
think that's
rather,
really the truth, though?
start from the ground up. They would rather start with, the foundations in place. It's more authentic and genuine that way.
I think the thing that takes care of both of those concerns is a very independent single mom, right? What do
Yeah,
what do guys
like
think
I'm saying,
of-
like it sounds like from the manosphere's perspective. I know this may not be yours, Wheats, but it's something where, on one hand, the single moms are bad because of the fact that they want to get resources and things like that. But on the other hand, it's also bad that women are in the workforce and doing well for themselves. So you can't really have it both ways.
Yeah, I don't agree with every argument that these red pill content creators make. I'm just echoing the things that they say. I haven't said yet whether or not I disagree or agree with any of those points. I'm just echoing
Oh, okay.
what people say in the manosphere.
I feel like I also like, and I understand that. So I had a friend point this out to me. There's a woman that watches my stream, and she says that like one of the reasons why women don't watch a lot of male streams or male content creators is because everything always feels like it's coming from a male perspective, even if you're not trying to gender your stuff. There's just like a certain type of energy, a certain type of way that men talk about things that just feels like very alien to women. And I'm sure it's probably true for women talking about things for men as well. There are a lot of problems that red pillars give that I feel like are equally seen on both sides, but they'll give this like really weird version where they pretend it only happens on one side, and then they back it up with like a lot of weird like biology. So for instance, that phrase that you uttered earlier, that like men don't want to raise another woman's child, and then like we'll try to say like, well, biologically the resource investment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, doesn't make sense. Wouldn't the same argument apply for women though? Like, why would a woman want to raise another man's child if we're going by strict biology? Like technically neither one would be passing on their genes, right?
Yeah, that's actually true. I don't know why women would find single fathers attractive, or if that's even true. Like, because just me logically thinking, if I was a woman, obviously I can't, imprint myself on a woman and know what like the female experience is like. But just logically speaking, if I was a woman, I don't see why I would even consider single fathers, because obviously I would still want to raise my own family from the ground up. I wouldn't want to pick up where another woman has left off.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a fair answer. I really don't mind anything the red pillars say when they talk about how they view relationships or how they want to approach them. Like I'm always cool with all of it. The only thing that I run into where I start to get irritated is when people make these arguments and then they say that like, well, this is just something that evolution tells us is a reality that is inescapable. And then they try to make it sound like whatever claim they're making is like just so fundamentally rooted in biology. It is like this intractable, inescapable like facet of our realities. And I think that's where I start to get like, because like, well, hold on. I think there's a lot of different reasons why people might prefer a certain thing. And there's a lot of arguments from the other side that are never addressed either. So I guess here's one. Like, for instance, the idea that like men don't want to date a woman because they don't want to like be like rebuilding her if she's got like a kid, or they don't want to feel like they're like trying to rebuild her life. They want somebody that's already kind of put together. On the opposite side, I've heard a lot of women, even older ones that are in the dating market, that say like talking to new guys can be really stressful because a lot of guys act like they're looking for moms, where they're venting all their problems to you and they're like just emotionally completely immature, and it feels like you're just kind of like there, and there's like this like emotionally schizoid dude that you have to kind of like take care of. And I hear that complaint from a lot of women. So it seems like there are like problems that happen on both sides, but depending on what community you're in, they only ever speak to one side of it.
Well, I don't really hear too much, biological talk with regard to the, parenting thing, but I hear a lot more with regard to like the body counts and promiscuous women. The idea that men don't want to date women with high body counts because they think that she's going to be untrustworthy, that she might sleep with Chad behind your back. What's your thoughts on the like evolution arguments and biology that red pillars argue behind that?
I don't believe in the evolutionary argument there, because I think the evolutionary argument shows like the exact opposite is what I would argue. And in real life, I don't believe it to be the case either. It doesn't seem to map onto any of what I perceive to be as reality. Like the idea that like women are okay with men that sleep around, evolutionarily, that sounds like one of the least secure arrangements you could ever be in, right? Especially because from a purely biological perspective, a woman has a high investment in terms of offspring. So you need somebody that's going to stick around and take care of it. And if you're with a guy that's like fucking every, 21-year-old girl that walks by, chances of that guy leaving you are going to be really high compared to a person that can stay faithful.
Well, it's the difference between, what the man and woman is looking for when they are asking for loyalty. The man's main concern is paternal certainty, because if a woman's got a high body count and he thinks that she'll be disloyal because of that, his main concern is rooted in this idea that if he raises a child with her, he's not going to have 100% guarantee that the child is his, because obviously the woman, it's obviously guaranteed that if she has a baby, the child has her genetic material in it. But the man, he doesn't know. He's completely in the dark with regard to that, unless he's like keeping surveillance on her 24
Sure, but
hours a
like what if
day.
like a woman is with a guy and he
Um,
gets another woman pregnant?
Yeah, but this is the thing that I was talking about, is when a woman is, concerned about a man who could cheat, she's not necessarily going to be asking questions like, "Oh, how many times did you sleep with her? Did you enjoy it?" Things like that. That's what a man might ask a woman.
I
But
feel like a woman
the
would ask a guy that. No.
I think what she's more likely to ask, like, is, do you still love me? Are you going to be with her instead? Like, are you leaving me? Because that's, speaking from more like a provider sort of perspective, like resource provision, securing resources. Because if the guy leaves her for the other woman that he's cheated on with, then, that means that the original woman who's had a baby with the guy, that baby's going to be now unprovided for. He's out of the picture. But if a man, like, this is, what the red pillars say, that if a man sleeps with other women, but she still has the main woman that he's always going to give all of his resources, time, and attention to, then him sleeping with other women isn't necessarily going to impede on that.
Yeah, but
I
there's no
don't agree with
guarantee
the
if you're a
argument
woman.
100% of the time.
There's just no guarantee if you're a woman that a guy would do that, right? I think most women
Wait,
would assume the
say that
guys.
again.
I think that most women would. This is one of those huge ones that cross like just my feelings in terms of just like people I've spoken to. Like I don't think any woman would feel secure in a relationship if the guy was sleeping around a ton. Like they would feel
Yeah,
like
of
fuck, this
course.
guy might leave me
Like,
at any point in time. Like that would be the concern.
yeah, again,
Sure.
like I don't necessarily agree with the argument. Like, and again, if I was a woman, I would much prefer a guy who stays loyal rather than a guy who claims that he's high value and because of that he thinks that he can leverage his position to sleep with a bunch of other girls on the side. I'd much rather prefer the first option if I was a woman. But again, I'm just echoing what the red pill argument is when they're talking from the evolutionary arguments of the differences in how men and women respond to cheating and high body counts.
Well, this also kind of circles back to what we were originally talking about. And I'm wondering, in this day and age, what your guys' thoughts are about the availability for most men to cheat versus most women.
I
Because
think,
of the
yeah, I think women probably have more availability now.
I would think
Right?
that's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
but
think
women have always had more availability to cheat, right?
Yeah. They're kind of known to be the gatekeepers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think again, this is one of those things where like, yeah, my apps might have changed it a little bit, but I don't think men have realized historically like how often a woman is offered sex. Like always in every fucking exchange, every creepy random dude that hits on them. Like it's not a new thing with dating apps. Maybe dating apps have streamlined it a bit. Like I can make that concession that maybe it's like a bit more in your face now. But I don't think it's new. I think women have always had the opportunity available. So yeah.
But do you think though it's more difficult for men though than it has been historically?
Is it more difficult for men to cheat now? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Wheat, what's your thoughts?
I've not actually given it much thought on whether it's more or less difficult to cheat. The only thing I could say, this is kind of answering the question, but not exactly, is that nowadays, there's a lot more sexual liberation and views on polygamy and, like things like cheating being acceptable, I guess would kind of tie in with that and be correlated that it's more forgivable. Like, if we're saying that polygamy is becoming more accepted in society, maybe that would correlate with women forgiving their partner cheating more as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't got any like data to support myself, so there's not really much I can comment on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people still treat that, just like anecdotally. I feel like people still treat cheating as like the worst fucking thing, like worse than like fucking murdering somebody. It feels like when people talk about cheating, it is like the literal worst thing. But maybe not everybody feels that way. I don't know, maybe that's just a commentary.
Yeah, Emily feels that way.
I have a little bit more. I have a little bit more nuance. I have a little bit more of a nuanced opinion of that. What I've noticed is that when a man cheats, then like he's the worst person on earth. But when a woman cheats, there's a little bit more sympathy. Like obviously, a lot of people are still going to be
and it's the man's fault,
berating her. Yeah, obviously, a lot of
exactly.
people are still going to be berating the woman for cheating. But I still think that there's more sympathy given to her because they'll say like, oh, the man, like wasn't doing everything he can in the relationship. It's partially his fault because he needed to be there a bit more for her, support her emotionally when she needed him, and yada, yada, yada.
I agree with that completely. Like, there is zero support for a man that cheats, but there is some support out there for women that cheat.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's exactly that. There's just more sympathy there.
Even though the irony is that, again, women have more options to cheat, and they always have, but now it's streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think because there's this idea that women aren't traditionally open to that, and they are more of a relationship monogamous type, typically, as far as like comparing genders. And so people see it that way. And so they reason, well, if she was willing to cheat, why? Like there must have been a reason because she naturally doesn't want to cheat. I think
again with sexual liberation and, maybe not to, throw all women under the bus because it's definitely not true, but a small percentage of women, just like men, used to get validation from sex. Mm-hmm. Women are starting to view that sexual encounter as a form of validation, where before it would have been something that if it wasn't in a relationship, they would have more feel ick about that or something like that.
I do think that's happening, unfortunately, because I think that's really unhealthy. Really.
Well, Stephen may disagree because you're in an open relationship, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we both fuck around. It's not that complicated, yeah.
You must get like so much shit on every stream and podcast you do with any red pillar. I bet.
Yeah, because now the red pill, because the new weird red pill thing is this idea that like people should have like these one-ended open relationships, which are hilarious to me. But the sexual idea is basically that like no matter if I would have fucked like 100 women and the next night like my girl would have fucked one guy, like I would be like an eternal cuck, and that's just. But yeah, I mean that's how people do it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would expect from red pillars that you would have these like discussions with. They would just fixate on your open relationship and just never give you like the time of day on it. They would have go into it with a completely fixed mind, and just like grill you for all eternity just on this one thing, and they wouldn't talk about anything else. I haven't watched these discussions, but I would guess that's how they go down.
Yeah, oftentimes, yeah. But I mean, the problem is that the problem is there's not really much room to answer or argue about anything because people will just view any answer you give as like a cope. So like the idea is basically that you must be like completely and totally miserable and your life is horrible and you're crying and getting cucked every day. But any answer you give that it doesn't like basically confirm that as you just coping. So it's not really worth it's not really worth talking about.
Mm.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it works for you, and I think that's the important thing.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, my perspective is obviously we both like sex, and being only able to have sex with one person to me would be really sad.
Well, it's kind of like you have your cake and you get to eat it too.
Well,
Right?
I mean, I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, obviously, there's a whole bunch of additional complications and everything that come in with doing an open relationship, of course, right? Um,
Yeah.
Sure, like
Yeah.
catching feelings, that type of thing.
Well, that's the thing.
potentially.
Like, I get asked a lot of times on my channel if I go live about, what are my thoughts on polygamy? And I'm totally personally myself, like, I could only ever be monogamous. And I think that's just how I'm wired. I understand that some people are going to be wired differently, and I don't think that monogamy should be forced upon everyone. So if it works, it works. I would be curious because I think from my perspective and why I believe in monogamy is like, I think internally, like I would be, first of all, there'd be a level of jealousy and yes, a level of fear, right? That they might find a better connection and go that way because relationships always have some amount of difficulty and you could be in a bad spot in your relationship. And then, you're forming a bond with somebody else potentially. And then, what if that gets in their head and they see more value in that and they go off in that direction? So
What's the honeymoon stage too?
Right.
As far as
things are always great and wonderful, your first few times with somebody.
Well,
So that would
we
be my
can't speak to
fear.
this though, but that's why I asked Stephen as far as like,
Yeah.
what's your mindset, coming from the,
well, so
is it just more like, okay, like I'm finding another human being that I'm attracted to and
It's like
getting
just
off on them and,
sexual.
but just sexual, like there's nothing, besides that.
I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that. We can dive into that if you guys really want to head in that direction. This is the only thing that I would say in regards to these types of things, though, or this is something that I would caution everybody for. I like to. It's fun to break apart different social norms and see like what can change and like how could your life be different if you do things that are not the way they're normally done. That's really interesting. But I find that a lot of people that engage in that, they don't always ask the question of why were these social norms for so long to begin with. And I think that's a really important question to ask and answer. I like open relationships. They work for me. But I would say that like 99% of people are probably better off in monogamous relationships because that's just, I think, how most people are wired. I noticed today that it feels like, and it might just be because of the community I am in, but it feels like a lot of people are doing open relationships today. Like a lot. I just feel like I almost feel like I don't want to say it's the norm, but it's like, it doesn't even surprise me anymore. So it's like, oh yeah, we're open. And it's like, yeah, of course you are. Everybody seems to be. That's probably not a good thing. I feel like most of these people probably are going to run into huge problems. But that's just my feeling on it. Yeah.
Do you think that has to do with your
Do
environment?
you not have a territorial instinct?
No, but I'm a really atypical person. Like I've lived my life on the internet for the past like 12 years in like the most like hateful fucking communities that existed. So I think that a lot of the like inclinations that I have towards like normal human behavior are like just way, 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 way different. Like I have access to a whole bunch of people and I've got like a ton of shit that I can do with my life at all points in time. If I ever felt like my partner wanted somebody else, then they're free to go do their thing and I'll just either find somebody else or just keep working or whatever. Like I'm like a very like self-driven person. Like I don't really need like the external support or validation from my partner a lot. But that's just how I personally feel about things. And I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else. I don't even know if it's necessarily like healthy or the best approach to life. It's just how I personally process things.
Okay, if that's the case, and there's like, no, like sort of, it sounded like what you were saying there is that there's like no investment minimum like required. If that's the case, then
Well, I wouldn't say
the-
there's no investment. I mean, like me and my partner love each other. Like I don't think we're gonna like break up because of our open relationship. Like if I felt like that was a possibility, like if I was let's say for some reason I found a woman that I really loved and she was like kind of a more monogamous minded person. And I felt like that for some reason I was like, holy shit, maybe I'll give up like my kind of lifestyle for this. I'd be more likely to give it up than push her into it if I think that I'm going to like lose her because it's just not how her brain is wired. Like I think I'd be like, okay, well, we'll just both be monogamous then, I guess.
No, but if you just said that, like if she's having fun with somebody else,
Mhm.
then you're just going to be self-driven in that instance and focus on work, focus on your friends or hobbies, anything you have going on in your life at the moment.
Mhm.
That shows it like you're not even phased with the level of investment that she's giving, or you're giving at the moment in time. So my question is, like, what's the difference between the situation that you're in as opposed to just being fuck buddies? Like, because it sounds identical to me.
I think it does. I'll answer that question, but I always like to flip that question around. People always say that, like, if you're doing this, aren't you just fuck buddies? But then, like, my reverse question, I was always like, are you telling me that the only thing that makes your relationship different than a friendship is that you exclusively fuck? Because that's kind of what I hear when people ask that question. Like, well, if you're having sex with other people, then your relationship isn't real. And it's like, is the only thing that makes your relationship real the fact that you only have sex with each other? But I understand that it's a little bit more complicated. Of course, it's just a way to flip the question around. The way that I view it is that there are like certain people in my life that are really special that I prioritize over other people. For my wife, like she's my number one priority. If she wants to live somewhere, we're going to live where she wants to live. I'm not moving in with another girl, right? If there's some like super special, awesome thing that I really want to do, like I really want to go to Tokyo at some point, I just haven't traveled yet. But when I do that, it's almost for sure going to be with her. Like when it comes to like if I've got like a friend that's really sad that's like a fuck buddy or something and like my wife is really sad, like I'm not gonna ditch my wife and be like, yo, I'm gonna go hang out with this other girl, like she needs me right now, sorry. Like that would never happen, you know. So like there's a feeling that I have because she's my wife and she's like my priority and she's the person that I love the most. It doesn't mean that I can't like enjoy fucking other people, enjoy like hanging out with other people. She still gets like that kind of priority slot in my life, I guess. It kind of be like how it's like having like, just because I have it's a weird comparison, but like I have a best friend, but I also have other friends too, if that makes sense. Sorry, it's kind of a weird. I understand that like the open relationship shit is like very wild and weird for a lot of people, which is fine. I understand it, but
Yeah, no one's judging here. We're just trying to get insight and understanding.
okay.
And
I want to be judged. Okay, so no, I'm sorry.
Stephen, you've been judged, like you said, for the last 12 years, right?
Yeah, true.
Well, going in a different direction, what do you think of? I caught this video of yours on your page. It was fairly recent, and it was talking about women's expectations, because I think that's another thing that is talked about a lot from men that are frustrated, especially with dating apps, is, they'll say that they feel like women's expectations are just way too high. And I think that in some ways that's true. I know the video that you were speaking to, it was like a lot of women that were of, I guess, rich backgrounds.
The Courtney Ryan one.
Is the Courtney Ryan one, yeah.
That Courtney Ryan girl, she's a tricky one. I
Yeah.
think those girls, I noticed this on this time. I paid closer attention because I listened to videos of hers in the past, and these girls will say some wild shit. Like,
say
I want a
wild
guy that makes like $650K a year. But I
Yeah.
paid attention more this time to the answers that they were giving, to the way that they look. And I was like, you know what? These aren't like crazy, stupid fucking women. These are
No.
crazy, stupid fucking rich people. These
Yeah.
people are fucking loaded. And I noticed it, especially when one girl I like cars, okay? Cars are fun for me. I really like my car. I've done a little bit of work on them in the past. They're like super fun. This girl is talking about like, I want these cars. I've never even heard of these cars before, okay? It's not like I want the McLaren or the Lamborghini. It's like, I want like the FX71Z Jaguar. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck this is. And like, I'm like, how much does this car cost? Like $300,000? And people in chat are like, no, that's a $2.5 million car. And I'm like, okay. Or like these other people, like, oh, I want to go to like the Maldives and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, damn, like have these places, a lot of these places I barely even heard about. I'm like, these are wealthy people from wealthy backgrounds. I don't think it's just like random women that she found off of Tinder.
No.
That she's like, yeah,
I totally
and so, like,
agree.
Yeah. So if that's the case, like I can understand if you're coming from a family where like if you've got friends that are lawyers and doctors, they're kind of like the poor people in the group. They're not poor, but they're like not the business owners and the from like old money kind of people. Like then it makes sense to me why you're looking for a guy who's earning, $250K a year bare minimum, because that's like the background that you come from,
Yeah.
It does make sense. And I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
So the average working class or even professional woman is going to look for a guy. It's probably her equal or above, but not necessarily, if you're 22,
Right.
wanting a guy to make 200 grand a year.
Now, I do hear a lot of women that say that, I want a man that makes $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
And
which
even
is still,
that is rare.
That's really high.
So I do think that there's some expectations out there that are, frustrating for men to come across.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they definitely happen. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do see it being, inflated in social media, just to.
Here's like this is kind of like this isn't very sexy, but I think this is like a true piece of advice too. This is like a tip that I give to everybody. A lot of people think they know exactly what they want, but if you actually get out and talk to people and meet people, it will shock you how wide your tastes can be. If you actually go out into the real world and meet people. This is one of the things I caution against people when it comes to dating apps, for men and for women. People will think that like I've got like a 72-point checklist for like if she's conservative, I won't talk to her. If he's a MAGA guy, I won't talk to him. If she is has dyed hair, I won't talk to her. If he's from a country, I won't talk to him, blah, blah, blah. Like people can have all these ideas built up in their head of like what the only acceptable possible partner to them looks like. But as soon as they meet a certain type of person, it could be like a super city liberal fucking Seattle girl can meet some guy who's like from fucking Iowa who's worked on ranches his whole life, but he's got a really nice smile. He's really funny. He's got nice forearms. He's like, for some reason, it's like, oh, this guy's actually like really cool. I like this guy a lot. Like you'll be surprised at the type of people that you can get along with. So I'm always like, whenever people say things like, I want a guy that makes 6 figures, or a guy's like, I only want to date a girl who's like 23 or younger or whatever. It's like, I think if you meet the right person, I think you'd be surprised at how wide your dating desires can be. That's just my feeling.
I think, yeah, I hear you and I agree. I think the difficulty right now in this day and age is what people connecting in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there is that tendency, especially on dating apps, because I think women are seeing more matches that like they think that they can have like this really long laundry list of things that they're looking for, because honestly, it just helps them cut some of those guys out. It may not be the right guys, but it makes it more her able to actually look at them and not get overwhelmed and just jump off the dating app because she's overwhelmed. So I get it, but I think that they need to work towards kind of eliminating based on the more important things, and having an open mind.
Well, and I will say honestly, here's a kind of funny anecdote, is for an experiment. I went on a Filipino dating website, and so, within the first few hours, I got hundreds of matches, and it was something that, how did I narrow it down?
Yeah.
Who was the prettiest?
Did you?
Of course. I mean, because what else did I have to go by? There was nothing else.
Oh, there was like, what about bios?
The bio is saying looking for a serious relationship.
Oh, and they like all said that?
Yeah, they all said that.
Why the fuck? Okay, hold on. Can I ask this fucking question? I truly don't understand this. Okay, I noticed on dating apps. Okay, why the fuck? Maybe Emily can answer this. Okay, women write shit in their bios, and I don't think they fucking remember they write. One thing that I used to think was like a clever strategy early on was like, oh shit, like I'm gonna make a joke or a reference to something in her bio. Like half the girls don't even remember the shit they put there. I don't know why the fuck they ever fill the bios out ever. There's like no point. If you're on a dating app and you're a guy, don't ever reference anything in her bio ever, because she fucking didn't remember what she put there. I don't know why women do that. It drives me fucking crazy.
I think photos she'll remember though. Maybe a reference
for sure.
to photos.
Photos are learning how to take good pictures is a really important skill. Like having like really nice, I notice now because my girl does the Instagram shit. Like I pay so much more attention to like photos. Like what does it mean to take a good photo? Why don't you want like 50 million people in the background? Don't chop a person's like legs off when you're taking a picture. Like make sure that they're taking good photos is a skill. Like you want to look like you're happy and you're having fun, and it's not like a weird fucking blurry pic. And you look like social. Like there's a lot of skill that goes into that. Find some Instagram girl and look at how she takes pictures and like copy that shit. Even if you're a guy, I think it's a really important thing to do.
We've even recommended getting professional photos done.
Absolutely.
For guys.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess what I was saying. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to chip in one more thing with regard to these crazy standards that people have, like the 6 figures thing, the 6 foot, an over thing. In fact, I might as well just say the whole of the rule of 6, as a red pill sphere likes to put it, is women's standards. They are drawn to the number 6. So like 6 figures, 6 inches, 6 foot. What is it? 6 out of 10 facial attractiveness and above. All of those things. And I think what makes this increasingly happen is because on online dating, I think OkCupid was the first platform to introduce this. You get all of these filters, which in essence allow you to select for exactly the right person that you want to look for. So, you can filter for only guys who are 6 foot and above, only guys who make 100K per year or more. only guys who are like between the age of 20 and 25. And now, this basically allows people to manufacture their partner, provided that there's someone out there that ticks all of those boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that kind of is a reference almost to kind of what I said before, and that like trying to match, they would call it like their 72 dimensions of compatibility, or trying to match on all those things. I think is really bad. I think it really fucks your head. And it's funny too because like some of our preferences are even drawn by like just kind of like how the numbers look to us. So like I saw a really funny thing at some point that like I think it was showing like what women, given the opportunity to set their filter, like what preference they had for like a male's height. And it was funny that there was a huge spike right at 6 feet tall. But you know that if you lined a bunch of men up and you asked women like by height, like who's most attractive, they're probably only gravitating towards that 6 foot number because it's like nice and even. Like in reality, it'd probably be like 5'11" or like 6'1" or whatever. But it's funny that we'll gravitate towards like those like the very even numbers, and then we feel like that's what our brains are kind of like focused on, and we don't realize that we're kind of like doing like number games there. Same thing with like six figures too. Like I want a guy that makes 100K a year, when like that number means totally different things based on where you live, based on the type of lifestyle you want. But it's just we're drawn towards those like really round, nice numbers, you know?
Well, it's interesting because in Europe they use the metric system, not feet and inches.
Yeah.
And in countries like Germany, France, the height number is 180 centimeters because that's the round number, and that's equates
Slightly
to 5'11".
Yeah.
To 5'11". So, in places like Germany, the ideal is to be 5'11" because that equates to 180 centimeters.
But then another thing I found out too is that I don't think anybody knows how tall anybody is, because I realized when I got online, dude, men lie about their height a ton. I am the tallest 5'8" man I've ever met in my entire life. I tower over guys that are 5'9" supposedly, and I'm like the same height as so many 5'10" dudes. I didn't realize like how many guys have their height. And then I've heard girls say like really dumb shit as well. Like, oh, like my ex was like the best sex ever. Like he was so hot. Like he had like a 10-inch dick. And I was like, no, he did. What the fuck are you talking about? Like people just say like, they just have like the wildest fucking things in their head because they don't even know. Yeah.
I do agree with that. I don't think women really can tell how tall a man is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we've recommended that men go ahead and, up yourself a couple of inches in height, because then you can at least, make it through the door.
Yeah, you can get in the door, and then the woman won't even think about it after
Yeah,
that.
I wouldn't.
Unless you just have to be careful though when you start getting to taller women. The only like big disqualifier I'll say is women don't want to feel like they're taller than a guy if they're wearing like heels, like stuff like that. So if you're gonna be with a woman that's like 5'7" or 5'8", if you tell her that you're like 6'1", and she puts on some 3-inch heels and she's towering over you, she's gonna know that there's some shenaniganery going on. So.
Well, we would say you have to wear lifts then, right?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Soft
good.
looks
Wear your
next.
boots.
But then when the lifts come off,
Well, you're in bed by then,
that's
so
when
you're good.
Screwed. You'll have to take your shoes off at the very last second. Once you get into your house, just keep them on until you're actually in the bed.
Be one way to do it.
Well, anything else? Where are we at?
We're at 6:40.
We haven't really talked about social media that much.
Yeah, you know what? Going back, I think Wheat Waffles, you were making the point about Instagram and how women's sense of self is inflated based on that. I was thinking about that more, and I think that a lot of times on Instagram, women are following more so a certain lifestyle. Like they want the man that's pictured with the beautiful woman. I don't think it's as much like she's posting about herself. I think that there's a select few women on Instagram that are actually posting themselves and getting validation from the likes. And I think a lot of those are ones that work in social media. But I think the vast majority of women, there is an impact from Instagram, but I think it has more to do with the lifestyle. I think that they're seeing the perfect proposal. They're seeing the woman on Instagram that is listing out the things that her man does for her. She's seeing the giant ring on her finger. And I think that's honestly where some of those expectations come from. And it's less like the individual likes on her photo that she's posting.
There was a saying a long time ago that got popular that I think is really important. It's the don't compare your behind the scenes to everybody else's highlight reel. There's been a problem since Facebook first came out where you see like the best of everybody's life, and then you look at your life and you think that everybody's living this like Disney fantasy constantly. And I think that really fucks. I think that's been fucking our brains up for like the better part of the last 15 years.
I think
Sorry,
so.
I cut off
Yeah.
Wheat Waffles.
Absolutely.
No, I wasn't gonna say anything relevant. I was just gonna ask for more clarification anyway. And I think that's even more enhanced by, the filters that people use, and like people select the best photo from the one angle that makes them look really good. So that like inflates the standards even more for both men and women, in fact. Like, men who like pornography addiction is a huge problem for men nowadays, and I think that has an impact on like men's ED as well. Like I've heard a lot of evidence that men like increasingly have ED nowadays because they're exposed to like the most ridiculous stuff in porn, and women with ridiculous bodies, like in a good way, on TikTok and Instagram and so on.
Yeah, it's almost like they're desensitizing themselves.
Yes.
Well, have you guys heard of like the businesses? I think this is mostly in LA that like stage like the look of a private plane. And so that people can come in and pay a fee
Yeah.
and get photos. And it looks like you're on a private plane. It's yours,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
it's just a box.
Yeah, it's just a box. I mean,
Really?
there's more
I've
of
not
that.
seen that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thing
But it's
now.
faking it. People
Yeah.
just fake.
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
This-
keep that in mind too when you're seeing these photos of people's lifestyles.
Yeah, this is why I don't particularly think it's a good idea for guys to take a photo in front of a supercar for their Tinder profile, because people just assume that it's fake, or like, it's somebody else's car, that you're just standing in front of your mate's car who's rich.
Well,
and
you also
it's
look
not
like a
your car.
gigantic douchebag
Yeah.
by doing
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
right?
I think it depends on the picture. As long as it looks nice, like just people need to practice taking nice looking pictures. There is a skill that goes into it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I think if it looks
yeah.
like you're showing it off, it's like just you, like very stiff standing there. That may not be a good look.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I mean, cool. I want to thank Steven for letting us on his stream, first of all, because, we're a very small channel. We just started out. We've only been up for a couple months. It's okay if we plug it. It's the Emily and Todd podcast on YouTube. And, that's something that we really are grateful for, because, I'm a fan of yours. I've watched your stuff, and I think that you are a very intelligent guy, and you bring a lot to the table. And I think that you bring a voice of reason, especially.
I try sometimes.
What's that?
I try sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you do a really good job of it, and it's something I think that your voice is really needed for a lot of people.
That's what I noticed.
nice.
I mean, Todd is the one that exposed me to you, Steven. And I think what I've really noticed from the last few videos that I've watched of yours is that it's very much, it feels like it's coming from a point of view that's just full of common sense. And you're not like overplaying it, overthinking it for views. I think that you're willing to talk about the nuances, which I think a lot of people in the manosphere could benefit from.
Yeah. Well, thanks. But yeah, that open. There's a couple things where people like instantly write me off, but yeah, I try my best out here.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on as well. It's been good. I've enjoyed the discussion. I think there's a lot of interesting points that we've spoken about. And if anyone is interested in finding me, it's Wheat Waffles on YouTube. That's me.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks
Well,
for being
thanks a lot
here,
for
Wheat
that.
Waffles.
Yeah, thanks for coming
Thanks
on.
for hanging out. All right. Yeah. Is that all?
Yep. And we'll see you in person in a few days.
Yeah. Should be fun.
Yes, we'll have a whole bunch of different topics we can talk about that we haven't spoken about today.
Gotcha.
And then obviously anything
Right.
you want to talk about, we're open to it as well.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot. I
right.
really appreciate it, guys.
Of course.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, see you guys later.
Okay.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Bye.